property tax calculation. I don't expect you to read it. Take it home and study it if you want. But it's something that Darren was forced to do as part of the legislation with regard to the property tax cap that shows that the allowable increase under the terms of the property tax cap would be $2,219,676. Next slide. You'll see that that is compared to the proposed increase in the property tax levy under the 2012 budget, which would mean we'd exceed the cap by $5,384,038. How can we possibly get to a position where we're having to increase our property taxes by that amount? This slide, next slide, is the one that's most instructive. This is the same slide you've seen for a couple of years, with just 2012 added to it. You'll note that's the reduction in our sales tax from 8.25 to 7.5. It's an annual decrease of $11,732,738. Those of you who are following along, you can take a look at the expense or the revenue that needs to be generated by the increase in the property tax compared to the sum of $11,732,738. The next slide is one I spend just a moment walking you through, and again, the colors aren't as bold as I would like, and the numbers are kind of small. For those in the back that don't have the calculation, it highlights in one line what I just told you. In 2005, the property tax rate in Chautauqua County was $9.98. Proposed property tax rate next year is $10.03. I think what's more illustrative, though, if you take a look at the darker line in blue, that's our sales tax receipts. If you compared and calculated the lost revenue in the sales tax, going from what our sales tax rate was in 2006 to 2012 as projected, that's a loss of $68,750,000. $68,750,000 we have not collected in Chautauqua County. Take away the $11 million we're not going to collect next year, and you have $57 million we have not received in revenue to continue county operations since our sales tax was reduced. Towns, villages, and cities have received zero in reductions in their sales tax since our sales tax was reduced. They continue to receive the same amount. Despite the fact that we received $57 million less dollars, with your help and the help of our department heads and other county workers, we were able to not only absorb that loss up until last year, we were also able to reduce the property tax rate up until last year. That's only because of your work and the collective work of our co-workers in county operations that we found ways to get that done. No doubt about it, we also had to use our rainy day funds, which we also call it our fund balances, to help support that. That was $57 million before you calculate the loss of the money because of the appropriate reduction in our property tax rate when we could. Impact on the average homeowner is where I always have my focus. The tentative budget in this next slide will show that on the median value home, which is slightly more than $75,000, the tax rate increase will be an additional $85.29, of which we control 10%, of which the state gets 90%. If we had had the sales tax rate we used to have before it was reduced, you'd be seeing in tonight's budget a property tax cut to the median household owner of $47.06. Instead of an $85 increase, you'd have a reduction of $47 in your property tax. As I always do, as my financial professionals always do with me, we project into the next year. We already know that if nothing changes I'll be standing before you at the State of the County a few months from now telling you the projected deficit for county operations next year will be $9,728,000, despite everything that's contained in this tentative budget. So we already know, as I told you last year, the same time, and years previous, we know what our paying is going to be going forward if nothing changes. If nothing in that 90% changes, we'll be staring down the barrel of over a $9 million deficit next year that will require more layoffs, more cuts to our services, and more increases in our property tax if nothing changes. Next slide again, to remind you that if nothing else, spend some time with this slide. Talk to your finance professionals. Call Darren, call Kitty, call Mark. Talk to them about this calculation. Challenge them, challenge me on this calculation that it's now 90% of our total budget. Because through that challenge, through that drilling down, you'll see exactly what we present here and why we're going to spend some moments talking about something differently for next year. I'll warn you that I don't normally do this, and I don't want this to become to you as a shock, but sometimes you need to see something to really capture where we are. And in a moment, I'm going to ask John to run a video clip for you. Video clip which many of you have already seen. Virtually anybody who has a young child, most of you who have grandchildren, will have seen this clip. Well, let me set it up for you. I can't thank Todd Tram enough for coming here tonight and saying what he did. Chamber gets it. I think everyone in this room gets it. What's that one of the most overused phrases, the definition of insanity? Is doing the same thing time and again and expecting a different result? I can tell you that I had conversations with elected leaders from across New York State, Wednesday and Thursday. I learned that since, one of the gentlemen in the room, that since 1974, elected leaders at the county level in New York State have been challenging the leadership in Albany, telling them you can no longer balance your exorbitant, extortionate type spending on the backs of counties. Because all we have become since 1974 is nothing other than the tax collector for the elected leaders in Albany. We have become the victims of a campaign slogan, tax cap. 2% tax cap, when they sent us 3 times that amount in new mandates. I have tried every reasonable effort following practices I've done my whole adult life. Discussion, reason, facts, documents, getting to the point of pleading, to the point of arguing with leaders across New York State, trying to help them understand what is being imposed upon the people of New York State, what's been more importantly imposed on the taxpayers of Chautauqua County. But they've always been able to do it. Since 1974. Now, that was what one elected leader told me in Albany. I can tell you that I previously have read every one of the State of the County addresses for prior county executives. Beginning with John Glenser, this refrain has been the same. It's only because County Executive Rossi, being a new county executive and having that opportunity, I didn't read this specifically in his. I recall specifically reading it from John Glenser on. We can no longer tolerate the imposition of obligations by Albany on the backs of the taxpayers in Chautauqua County. And I could quote it. And every year, whether you're Republican or Democrat, whether it's your first year or your 8th year, every one of those State of the County addresses included that. I am done participating in acts of insanity. We have an opportunity to do something differently. I'm going to ask you to consider the following. Even though it's my obligation in my tentative budget to deliver a balanced budget, as obligated under the rules of our financial management policy. I'm calling upon you to consider debating with me and discussing with me a couple of different options. To try and drive that message home and our capacity to win this argument that I'm going to ask you to engage in, I'm going to show you this video clip. And you and I and the taxpayer of Chautauqua counties are flick in the bug's life. I'm telling you, despite their well-intentioned, and a lot of them are very nice people that are in the Senate, and the Assembly, and are currently the governor, they're the grasshoppers. It's about 2 minutes.
Dirt. No, I'm wrong. You're lower than dirt. You're an ant. Let this be a lesson to all you ants. Ideas are very dangerous things. You are mindless, soil-shoving losers. Put on this earth to serve us. You're wrong, Hopper. Ants are not meant to serve grasshoppers.
I've seen these ants do great things. And year after year, they somehow manage to pick food for themselves and you. So who is the weaker species? Ants don't serve grasshoppers. It's you who need us. We're a lot stronger than you say we are. And you know it, don't you?
Well, Princess.
Hopper, I hate to interrupt, but
You ants stay back! Oh, this was such a bad idea.
You see, Hopper, nature has a certain order. The ants pick the food, the ants keep the food, and the grasshoppers